Welcome, guys, to my new episode of this podcast. I know it's been a while. Sorry it's been so long. We're gonna start. Leave a voice message if you'd want to. I'll respond to them, maybe put them in a video. So, yeah. Let's get started. Starflight pointed to the flames rising from the black rocks. Pearl, the fire doesn't hurt you, right? You shrugged. It tickles a little, that's all. And the fire is coming from the rocks. What if you picked up the rocks and moved them? Could you put the fire somewhere else and open the doorway for us, couldn't you? Clay's heart was beating fast. Pearl tilted her head at Starflight. He is smart, she said. Just like you. I guess I could do that. She sounded like she wasn't entirely convinced. If you're really sure you want to escape tonight, of course we are. Nami said, springing to her feet. Let's get out of here. But Sunny, Starflight said, we hide somewhere and wait until Pearl can free her tomorrow. Snowy said. And Glory, Clay said. Gotta save Glory too. Glory? Pearl's brow creased in a frown. The Rainwing Queen Scarlet's new artwork, Clay said. Oh, Pearl said. She's very beautiful. She narrowed her eyes at Clay, which confused him. Let's run away now and worry about her later, Tsunami said. Is there somewhere we can hide? Pearl snapped her wings open. Below the waterfall, there's a cave only I know about. She turned, nearly smacking Clay with her tail, and hopped over the pool into the fire. Clay watched in amazement as she wrapped her claws around two black rocks and picked them up. She stepped into the tunnel, and the fire from the rocks went with her, blazing around her talons. Carefully, she piled the fire on the rock floor outside until there was a gap big enough for the dragons to jump through. Tsunami went first, and then Clay, and then Starflight. Then they were all out the tunnel. Pearl rebuilt the wall of fire across the cave entrance. There, she said with satisfaction. Now she'll have no idea how you got out. Can you cut off our wings? Starflight whispered, pointing to the bindings. Pearl gave him a hard look. Maybe, she said, but maybe I'll wait until I know you won't leave without saying goodbye. You won't leave without leaving our friends, Clay promised. He scowled. Which way to the waterfall? Tsunami asked. Pearl nodded up the tunnel and slithered off, leading the way. Stop making her mad, Tsunami hissed in Clay's ear as they followed. Me? He said, genuinely surprised. What did I do? Well, you're a handsome idiot, she said affectionately. And I'll tell you later. Which didn't clear up things at all. Shortly before they reached the central hall of the balconies, the tunnel turned left and began to rise. Pearl signaled for them all to move quietly, and they all crept toward the sound of the dragons shouting, singing, and smashing things. Pearl glanced over her shoulder at Clay, who was concentrating on moving his talons carefully over the rocky over the rocky, gold-laced floor. "Hey," she whispered. "Once you're free, what are you going to do?" "We'll go find our parents," Chloe whispered back. "I've never been to the Mudwing Kingdom. I can't wait." "Really?" Pearl said. "We'll go straight there? Just the five of you?" "Absolutely. As soon as Pose Clay started, and then Tsunami trod heavily on his tail. He squelched a yelp of pain and made a face at her. When he looked up again, Pearl had hurried ahead. Clay guessed they had climbed 2 levels, circling behind balconies when they reached an open doorway as tall as 5 people and just as wide. They hid around a corner of the tunnel and peeked out. The doorway led out onto a flat ooh, I don't know what that word is. See how much page we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. Wow. "Oh," Pearl said. She's very beautiful." She narrowed her eyes at Cliff, which confused him. "Let's run away now and worry about that later," Tsunami said. "Is there somewhere else we can hide?" Pearl snapped her wings open. "Below the waterfall there's a cave only I know about." She turned nearly... Okay. Between the cliffs, packed with skywings and sandwings and lit by floating globes full of fire. Most of the skywings were wearing gold or copper or precious jewels that sparkled in the fire. The sandwing desert dragons looked rough and common next to them, and many of them stood awkwardly as if they'd rather be charging into battle than making polite conversation at a party. Statues of Queen Scarlet in different regal poses were scattered about the floor. Some carved from marble, some of gold, others of smooth black rocks with rubies for eyes. Tables around the outside were piled high with food, and several kinds of prey were also running frantically between the dragon claws. A low rock barrier kept the prey from escaping into the tunnel. And all around the plateau were steep cliffs going either up or down, so they were trapped. I saw a skywing pause mid-conversation, smash her talons down on a mountain, go pop it in her mouth, and continue chatting with the sandwing opposite her. He also spotted a couple of scavengers among the prey. Instead of running around like terrified chickens, one was trying to climb up the cliff. The other was crawling under one of the tables to hide. Made him wonder if scavengers were smarter than they looked. Now that he could see the feast was out in the open air, he realized how the dragons out here had heard the prisoners singing. He'd been wondering how the sound had carried down the long tunnels, but there was an arena but from here the arena was only a short dragon hop across a couple of cliffs. Queen Scarlet lay on a tall golden throne, looking down at the other dragons. Another short throne stood up next to her for Bern. Although Bern's enormous height brought her heads almost to the same level, Bern kept shifting and scowling as if the fancy curved seat was uncomfortable. Starflight grabbed Clay's shoulder and pointed at large bird cage hanging over the center of the space. It was held aloft by the wires like the one of the prisoner's legs, strung between tall poles or either side of the plateau. Occasionally a dragon or two would fly up and circle the cage, peering in, and then fly back down to the floor. Crouched inside the cage with her wings over her head was stunning. Her golden scales glowed dully in the firelight, as if she were just another piece of treasure. Stop, Tsunami whispered as Clay started forward. I want to go get her too. But if we do it right now, it's suicide. Starflight agreed. Better to let them think we leave without her if they know we care about her. They'll use it against us. His tail flashed in frustration. But she's all alone, Clay whispered. If only she knew they were there, not too far away. He stretched a little farther out, looking for Glory, but he couldn't see her. Perhaps Scry was hiding her from Burn. You guys cross first, Pearl said. Crouch low and run, and hopefully they won't spot us, she said. She sent Tsunami darting across first, and the others followed one at a time. Clay followed him, wishing he had darker scales that could melt. Alright, 1, 2. Okay, we can finish. Into the shadows like starflights, they huddled around the next bend, waiting for Peril. Sorry, she said, when she was caught up a few moments later. I had to wait for the Queen to look away. From here, the tunnel branched in several directions. Peril took the one leading down under the cliff where the feast was. The torches were spaced farther apart as they went along, so the tunnels grew darker and darker. Soon, Clay could hear roaring up ahead, and this time he knew for sure it was a waterfall. They emerged on a narrow ridge halfway up a tall, craggy cliff. By the light of the moons, they could see straight down to a glittering, winding river far below. The waterfall pounded ahead of them, loud and fierce, and the wind carried bursts of cold spray into their faces. Starflight pressed him back against the cliff. Are you sure you don't want to unbind your wings now? He said, closing his eyes. You'll be fine, Peril said. It's easy to climb over down here. I've done it while my wings were tired. See? The cave's right there. Clay peeked over the edge and saw a small gap in the cliff far below. Like a tiny gash in the wall behind the waterfall. It was definitely a journey he preferred to wish to do with functioning wings. If he had to keep Pearl happy, I see some claw holds, he said, and we can rest on that boulder halfway. He stopped. Over the roaring of the waterfall, he could hear her wing beat. Someone was coming. He spun around. Hide, he said, frantically pushing Pearl toward the tunnel. If they find you helping us, the Queens will kill you, the champion or not. She stopped in the mouth of the tunnel, staring at them. Clay turned and saw Tsunami and Starflight wearing matching shocked expressions. How would you do that? Peril whispered. Do. Clay started, and then he felt that in his talons, he had touched Pearl's scales without even thinking. He looked down, expecting to see dark scorch marks and claws crumbling to ash, but his talons were only glowing a warm red, and even as he looked at them, the redness and the heat faded away until his talons felt entirely normal again. Stop gawping, Snowy ordered, shoving him at the tunnel. Everyone run. I don't think so, said Queen Scarlet's chilly voice behind them. Clay turned slowly and saw the Skywing Queen descending from the cliffs. Her bejeweled wings spread wide. Thank you, Peril, the Queen said nastily. You may be excused. Clay didn't understand. Thank you for what? Peril gave him an agonized look and fled up the tunnel. Queen Scarlet smiled at the dragonets as Skywing soldiers began to rain from the sky, going somewhere. We're gonna end right there. We made it to chapter 24. Why did I say that? I'll see you later. Bye, Johnny.